Why read anyway? Here's why. Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Marilyn Maya, and today I'm doing something different. I've gotten the question many a time in my life. It's my seventh decade of life. Why do you read so much? Why read anyway? It's boring. So I thought I would give not only my idea about why reading is essential and vital and underrated, but other people who are more knowledgeable than I from all walks of life and different times. So quotes from famous people basically, but also what I think. So let's get to it. The first one is mine, that I made up. You can be someone different when you're lonely or sad. So when I read, I become the character for that period of time. In other words, I'm no longer me, but I'm the heroine. And this started early in my life with fairy tales. And I've shown this book before, but it's a fairy tale book that I actually got in Denmark. It's Hans Christian Andersen, Classic Fairy Tales. And I think that I also said that, and I don't know if it's his fairy tale or not, but my favorite fairy tale was called Snow White and Rose Red, because I was an only child, and I always wanted a sister or a friend, and I was pretty lonely. So books help with that. So let's get to the other six reasons why you should read. Number 2 is to feel less lonely or scared. When I was growing up, I grew up in a household that was quite chaotic, and I turned to books because not only was I an only child living in that house, but I was often sad about things that were happening. So C.S. Lewis, who wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which I didn't read, but I did read a biography of his, says, "We read to know we are not alone." And Honore de Balzac, and he's a French writer. In fact, he lived in Paris, and I haven't read any of his books, but I heard he was quite interesting writer in that he wrote quite frankly about sexual things. He says reading brings us unknown friends, and I agree with that, because there's many a character that have become friends to me during, even now I'm reading a book, and I'll get to that later, that I feel that I'm friends with the heroine, because while I'm reading it, I see the similarities between me and her. So James Baldwin says, "It was books that taught me the things that tormented me most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive or who had ever been alive." And I want to read The Fire Within, one of his books, this year. So that really brought to home that you get connected with people alive or dead, and things that tormented us, we're not alone because they tormented other people. F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote, "That is part of the beauty of all literature. You discover that your longings are universal longings, that you're not alone and isolated from anyone. You belong." Belonging is so important to people, especially younger people. And I see people, they use social media to belong, but sometimes that doesn't work, and you get negative feedback from social media. But when you're with a book, it's you, yourself, and the character. And you get a strong connection with that character, if it's a good book. Number 3 is to learn empathy. And here I will show you again, and I didn't mention last time, it's Victober, and this is my first George Eliot novel. Haven't opened it yet. I'm going to read it as a serial, and it's Middlemarch. And what did George Eliot say about the power of reading? She said, "The only effect I ardently long to produce by my writings is that those who read them should be better able to imagine and to feel the pains and the joy of those who differ from them in everything but the broad fact of being struggling, erring human creatures." So that's empathy. We learn empathy by reading. And I hope that I learn, I think I have a lot of empathy, but you can always have more. And I'm looking forward to that. The next one is number 4 is to soothe when life is hard. And for this one, I've had a hard week this week, and not going into it deeply, I went to a doctor who, my mother always says, don't put doctors on a pedestal. So she wasn't the best, let's put it that way. And she told me I might need an operation, which no one has ever told me before in the recent times I've been to the doctor. So I know I have some chronic diseases. So I took out of my shelf Undo It by Dean Ornish and his wife Annie Ornish, How Simple Lifestyle Changes Can Reverse Most Chronic Diseases. And this is going to be good also for nonfiction November, so I'm keeping it off my shelf. But so when life is hard, we can turn to different books. And there's a quote from Montesquieu, who was a French lawyer, man of letters, and one of the most influential political philosophers of the age of enlightenment. And he says, "I have never known any distress that an hour's reading did not relieve." And so, I find it so fascinating that people think the same things that we think, hundreds of years or even thousands of years before. So number 5 is to escape. Books are escapism, right? And I'm going to read The Age of Innocence, and I'm going to escape. I'm going to read it with a subscriber, and I'm going to escape into, not a subscriber, a booktuber. I'm going to escape into 1920s New York. And what's wrong with that when you need soothing? So the next thing is, I said to escape. And Jeanette Winterson said, books and doors are the same thing. You open them and you go through into another world. And Neil Gaiman, who I've never read anything by, but has been suggested by so many booktubers that, especially after I read this quote, that I'm thinking of starting to read him. He said, "I think that pretty much every form of fiction can actually be a real escape from places where you feel bad and from bad places. It can be a safe place to go, like going on holiday, and it can be somewhere that, while you've escaped, actually teaches you things you need to know when you come back, that gives you knowledge and armor and tools to change the bad place you are in. So no, they're not escapist, they're escape." I love that. I just love that, because a lot of people think that escapism, is not good. We should live in the moment. But reading is living in the moment, in my opinion. And Mason Cooley, who I think wrote aphorisms. I don't know if I'm saying it right. What's killing me, what's not killing me is killing me. You know, he uses like the opposite. So he says, reading gives me some place to go when we have to stay where we are. And I always wanted to travel, but there were times when I couldn't afford to travel. So I used travel books and other authors' adventure stories to travel where I couldn't go at the time. But it also goes into the next reason I have for reading, and that's to learn. So I learned that I could travel by finding out ways other people who didn't have a lot of money travel. So it was good for both things. And Mary McLeod Bethune said, the whole world opened up to me when I learned to read. And she was a renowned educator and reformer, 1875 to 1955, and she dedicated her life to organizing and empowering African American women to work for equality. In 1904, she founded the Daytona Normal and Industrial Institute, a school for black girls that gave Florida students the tools they needed to become community leaders. In the 1930s, President Franklin D. Roosevelt appointed her director of the Division of Negro Affairs in the National Youth Administration, making her the first African American woman to hold a division in a federal agency. So I listened to what she says about that. And learning, another person who said, Carl Sagan said, one glance at a book and you hear the voices of another person, perhaps someone dead for 1,000 years. To read it is to voyage through time. And then on 7, I have like a cornucopia of quotes and my ideas about books. So S.I. Hayakawa, a Japanese-American senator, said, "It is not true that we have only one life to live. If we can read, we can live as many more lives and as many kinds of lives as we wish." And Harold Kushner, who wrote many, many books about dealing with difficult situations in life, said, "I think of life as a good book. The farther you get into it, the farther you get into it, it begins to make sense." So that's good. I'll end with a Ray Bradbury. You know, he was a very futuristic person, writer, and he wrote, "You don't have to burn books to destroy a culture. Just get people to stop reading them." And that's very sad, especially with the Banned Books Month last month. And yeah, so I have a lot of books that I'm going to show you in a few days. But when I was a teacher, many kids told me, you know, reading is so boring, I don't like to read. And I would always, you know, I worked as teaching English as either a foreign language or a second language. And some cultures don't have the culture of reading books. So audiobooks did it for them. And when they got hooked on audiobooks and listening to a story, because that's the way a lot of Micronesian, especially cultures, are storytelling cultures, they got into reading, and then they became interested in learning how to read. And everybody has a book that's for them, but not every book is for everybody. So I'm going to end this. I have a lot of books to show you that I'm going to show you in another video. But I think it's essential to read. And I think that every one of us who are readers should encourage a child or even an adult. At one point I taught literacy to adults because, you know, people have a hard time if they can't read, you know, because they have to fill out a lot of papers and forms, and life becomes hard, and they have to depend on other people to do those things for them. And then when they started learning how to read, they wanted to read and learn more. And that was so exciting, you know, to see people, you know, open up with books. So I hope you enjoy this video. I believe that there are so many reasons to read. And I hope that one of these reasons are your reason. So please subscribe to my channel, and I'll have more books for you soon. I will get to my Victober books and my September wrap-up, but I just wanted to come on and share this with you. So until we meet again, please not only subscribe, but comment. I'd love to hear your comments. And until we meet again, aloha.